Hi everyone, I'm Jane, and today we are going to try out glazing, all while painting a serene background with a Buddha and a couple of lotus flowers. I'm fairly new to glazing, and I am already almost halfway through my first bottle of glazing medium. I really am enjoying this technique, and I think it's something that I want to do a lot more of. So I hope that you enjoy it as well. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to one of my loyal subscribers and Facebook followers. Her name is Shweta, and she is the one who suggested that I paint a Buddha. And she posted the most beautiful photo I have ever seen of the Buddha to my Facebook page. And I was so taken with that photo that I immediately jumped on it and decided that's what I was going to paint this week. Make sure you check out the video description below for a full list of materials, and let's get started. For today's painting, we're going to use the following colors: Mars Black, Titanium White, Cadmium Yellow Deep Hue, Phthalo Blue, and Deep Violet. You may also want to use a little spray bottle, but if you don't have one, it's not necessary. And today we're going to experiment with Liquitex Glazing Medium. What the glazing medium does is it makes the paint really transparent but keeps the colors vibrant. That way you can layer them on top of each other without really covering anything. Now you really can use any kind of brushes that you have on hand or that you're comfortable with. But the ones I'm going to be using today are a 1-inch filbert brush. And I'm using this one because it's nice and soft, and that way I won't get hard edges when we're doing our glazing. So any brush that you have that has soft bristles will work. An old round brush that really isn't good for anything other than scrubbing. We'll be doing a little bit of scrubbing and shading with this brush. It doesn't have to be a nice brush, it can be an old cruddy brush. If you're going to use a nice brush for this, then at the end you may not have a nice brush anymore. And a small round brush. Again, it doesn't matter what size. Just use whatever size of brush you're comfortable with for drawing purposes. And then we're going to use a piece of chalk to draw on our initial Buddha face. I'm painting on a 12 by 16 inch canvas, and as you can probably tell, this is an older canvas. I painted over it with white paint. Now if you're using a brand new canvas, I would still recommend that you paint it white first, and that will give the glazes something to stick to. So we're going to start by drawing our Buddha face, and I just want it on one half of the canvas, so just half of the face, and then I'm going to put some lotus flowers over here. For me, it's easier to draw a face if I start with the eyebrow. That's just how I draw faces. So I'm going to take my chalk and decide where I want my eyebrow to be, and I want it to be in this 1/3 square. So I'm going to put my eyebrow right about like that, about a half an inch or so from the edge of the canvas. The good thing about doing this with the chalk is if you don't like it, you can just ignore it or wipe it off, but you can keep sketching over it until it's what you want to see. So there's my eyebrow, and then from the eyebrow I'm going to come straight down for a nose. And then under it, I'm going to do a shape. Let's see, I'll draw it right here so you can get an idea of the type of shape I'm doing. So if this is the edge of my canvas, I'm going to do a shape kind of like that, but much smaller. So about like that. And when we start painting this in, you can make adjustments to any of these. So if you feel like the nose is too big or it's not shaped right, you don't have to take your paint right over that chalk line. Now I'm going to draw an eye, and the eye is closed, and I want to give it kind of a graceful shape. You could just do a curve like that, opposite of what you did here, but I want to give it a little bit more of a graceful shape. So about like that. I started here, came up a little, down, back up, and flat. So just to make sure you can see, the shape I did for the eye there is about like this. To get rid of any chalk lines you don't like, just take a damp brush and just wipe it away. And it'll come right off. Now let's do the mouth. The corner of the mouth pretty much aligns with the center of the eye. So I'm just going to take a line straight down from the center of the eye. And remember, we're only doing a half of a face. So you're not going to put the Cupid's bow of the lips over here because the canvas is the exact center of the face. So we'll start maybe about an inch below the nose and do a little line that's kind of angling down that way. And then back up. So almost like a lazy half heart shape. And then I'm meeting up with that line. Start from there again. And bring it off that way. Let's draw the head. We'll come pretty much straight down until about where the mouth is, and then we'll start curving it in. And the ear, the Buddha's ear, is very long, and the top of your ear pretty much aligns with your eye as well. So we're going to come off the side of the head up to about where the eye is, about the same level as the eye, out, in just a bit, and it comes down low. Back up and connecting with the head again. And then the little dot on the forehead, just half of it. And then where the hair is going to come up, kind of following the eyebrow, come up and almost down to the dot. And meeting up with the ear. To do the lotus flower, we're going to start with a simple teardrop shape. And then just a few off of that. If it helps you to draw the entire teardrop shape, that's fine. Because again, we're going to paint over all that, the chalk comes right off. And let's make some that come out this way. And then one at the bottom. And I think I want to have another one, maybe right about here, just a smaller one. Now we're going to start outlining where our face is going to be. So I have a little bit of black and my little round brush, and I'm just going to wet it in my jar. And pull out a tiny bit of black. You don't have to worry about your lines being too small here. You can make them as thick as you want. I'm going to do some thin to thick type of lines. And that again is just all my brush control. So if I put very little pressure, I get a thin line. If I put more pressure, I get a thick line. So that's what I'm going to focus on doing here. So I'm going to start with the eye. I'm going to go thin on the edge, push a little harder toward the middle. And especially when you're painting over the chalk, you may have to get more paint more often. Thin on this edge and thicker as I get to the middle. Same thing on the eyebrow. Thin on the edge, thicker as I get to the middle. And then thinner toward the other edge. Coming down the nose here, I'm going to make this line nice and thin. And for the nostrils, I'm going to go with a pretty thin line. except maybe for right here, just to insinuate there's a little more of a shadow there. And I think I made that dot a little bit too big, so I'm just going to bring it down a bit. Make it a little bit smaller. On the lips, I'm going to start thin, and as I come up, I'm going to put more pressure. Just however you really choose to do it. I just think it makes it a little bit more dynamic if you add some thicker and thinner lines. And if you're not practiced enough to do that thin to thick, back to thin in one brush stroke, then don't. Just make your line and you can go back over it and thicken out different parts of it. So see, I'm kind of struggling getting that paint to cover right here because of the chalk. So just keep a little extra water on your brush and that will help the paint flow a little bit better. And now the serene little Buddha smile. If you need to draw this on first with the chalk, that's okay. I'm not going to outline the hair because the hair is a bunch of little circles or spirals. So those lines are there just for me to remember where the hair is. So don't worry about that yet. I'm not even going to outline the side of the head right here. I'm just going to go straight to the ear. Actually, I'm going to start right here and come down the side of the face. I always end up drawing the ear a little bigger than I want with the chalk, so when I go back over it with the paint, I at least have the shape there, and I can make it as small as I want. So just use your chalk as a guide. It's not set in stone. And then I'm just going to do a little curly shape inside of the ear. You can do this however you want. Or you can completely omit it if you're not comfortable with it. All right, the last thing to do is to make the circles for the hair. And again, I'm just gonna follow this chalk line and I'm gonna start with these here. You can make them as big as you want or as small as you want. And they don't have to be perfect. Just draw a bunch of circles in a row that are all touching. And remember to place your hand on the canvas. See, I've got my hand on the canvas. And I'm drawing these circles with the tips of my fingers. I'm not moving my hand or my arm to do it. That's going to give you better control. Now I'm going to come up here from the ear. I'm going to start with one here. Oh, I got a little spot that got away from me. Just clean off my brush and wipe that away. If you're terrified of drawing little circles because you feel like you can't draw a perfect circle, then don't worry about drawing perfect circles. Just draw them on there. Mine aren't perfect circles. Some of them are kind of lopsided. Some overlap a little bit. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Don't worry about it. Just get them on there. Okay, there's our Buddha face. Let's go ahead and draw in our lotuses. Same thing here. I'm going to start at the top with the thin line, and as I come down, when I get to the curve, I'm going to put a little more pressure on it and get a nice fat line. And actually, I kind of hate that. So I'm going to clean that up real quick. And if you really hate what you do and you didn't get to it fast enough to clean it off, just let it dry completely and paint over it with white. All right, I'm going to do the rest of the petals the same way. Now we'll paint the stems, and we're going to do the exact same way. You can make the stems look however you want, and if you don't want stems, you don't even have to do stems. Now just make sure that everything is dry before we move on to the next part. You can take a damp brush and get rid of the chalk lines if you really want to. I'm not going to worry about them because they'll all be washed off and painted in anyway. Now we're going to start glazing in some shadows. So mostly under the eyebrow, under the eye, the nose, just wherever you think there might be a shadow. And I'm going to use this old kind of destroyed brush so I get a nice soft edge. I have a little bit of my medium out, and as you can see, it's pretty runny. So I've wet my brush, and I'm gonna load up my brush with the medium. And you can mix this about 50-50 with the paint. The more medium you have, the more transparent your paint is gonna be. I don't want too much paint on here because it'll make it difficult to blend in. So I'm gonna start swooping just under the eyebrow here. Now you can see how transparent this black is compared to the black I used in the eyebrow. Down the edge here. And then I'm just going to dust over it a little bit to blend it out. I'm barely putting any pressure on my brush. And if your line is still too strong, just run over it with your finger. Down the edge of the nose, smooth it out a little bit. And you can even wipe it off on your paper towel a bit to really get a nice soft line there. We're going to add lots of layers to this. I'm going to do a little under the eye here. Even just got a little bit of water on my brush there. I know this is terrifying looking right now. Just hang in there. See, I'm just using a little bit of the medium on my brush, the medium and the paint mixture. I'm going to give a little shadow here under the nose. Kind of dust it out. And in the lips here. Now this medium makes the paint dry fairly quick, so just be aware of that while you're laying this down. But that's really good, that's a good thing, that's what you want, because when we start layering colors, you don't have to wait so long for each color to dry before you put the next color on. Super light pressure there. I'll add a little more under. I'm going to mix up a little bit more. And let's do some shading in the hair. I'm not going to shade the entire thing in. I'm really just going to kind of go along one edge, the same edge on all of the pieces. See, I'm not being real exact with this. This is supposed to look really spontaneous and flowing, the whole painting. So I'm okay with going outside of the lines. In fact, once I start really laying the colors on, the colors are going to kind of go everywhere and they're going to overlap and they'll go outside of the lines. So just let yourself work in a really free style. Let's run a little bit down the edge here. And kind of scribble at any lines you get to break them up a bit. Just got a little extra water on my brush there because I didn't like the way those lines were looking. There we go. Much better. I think we need just a little shadow on the nose here. So where this line comes down, I'm just going to kind of bring in a little shadow that wraps that way. And kind of fuzz it out with my finger a bit. Little shadow in the ear. And we'll add some to the flowers too. So again, loading up with my medium, bringing it over, mixing it in with a bit of black. If your black is too transparent, just add a little more paint and a little less medium. If it's too dark, just add a little more medium. So I'm just gonna kind of insinuate some little shadows in these flowers. All right, now we're gonna let this dry completely so that when we do start the color glazing, it doesn't drag the black around. Now we're gonna start glazing some colors on here. So I have my Cadmium Yellow Deep Hue and my Phthalo Blue and my Icky brush. I'm gonna load up with some medium and some blue. And I'm really gonna concentrate the blue in the areas that are shadows. That's just what I've decided to do. You can do this however you like and whatever colors you like. So I'm just gonna wipe it over that. It can go outside of it a little. It can overlap other sections. You don't have to be neat with it. Just get it on there however you like. You can even go outside of the face a bit. There's no need to be real precise with this. Just get it on there. And I'm going to start putting it up in the hair. And again, I'm letting it go outside a bit. It's going to give us a little bit of a watercolor type look. I just have a tiny bit left on my brush. I'm just going to scrub a bit of it here and there. And let's do the same thing to the flowers. So my blue and my medium mixture right over top of that black. And you can let it go outside of the flowers a bit even. If you're a control freak like me, this is going to be kind of difficult for you, but it'll be good for you. It's good to do things that you're not fully comfortable with in art. See, I'm not worrying about shape, I'm only worrying about color. You know, I might throw a little bit of that color just randomly throughout the background too. Just a little bit here and there. I think I'm going to take a little bit more of this black and glaze just a few little spots in the background really lightly with some black shadows. So maybe in here, So you can already tell how that blue is dry, and I'm putting the black over it, and it's not mixing, but it's layering them. And that's what this medium is gonna do. When we start layering colors over top of each other, you're gonna be really excited about what it does. Let's put a little hint of it down here in this corner, and then we're gonna let it dry. And actually, by let it dry, I mean I'm using a blow dryer. So I'm gonna make sure it's completely dry. So if you need to use a blow dryer, go for it. Remember when I told you not to use a good brush for this part? Do you see what I'm doing to this brush? I'm just crushing it down and just scrubbing the crud out of it. See that? If you do this to a brush that you like, you will ruin it. Okay, I think that's good. I'm gonna hit it with the blow dryer and then we'll be right back. Now we're gonna add some yellow to the face, and I'm gonna use my large filbert brush. But like I said at the beginning, you can use any brush for this. I'm just using this one because it's got really soft bristles. So I'm mixing some medium with my yellow. And I'm just gonna start swiping it on here. I'm letting it overlap the blue, and where it overlaps the blue, I'm getting a bit of a green color. If the yellow or any color isn't strong enough, you feel like it's too light, that's all right. Just keep going, let it dry, because you can come back and do another pass of the color over top of it once it's dry, and it will deepen it. And then I'm going to come into the hair and just kind of insinuate some of the yellow spots in there. And then let's put a little in the flowers. And notice how we're getting a nice green color where that yellow overlaps the blue. Just gonna add a little more yellow into the face. And you can even come back and add in some more blue if you like. Okay, blow dried the face real quick because I want to just fix up some of these blue lines that I feel like are just too sharp. But we're also going to come back and add some highlights in with some white. So you can really keep playing with this as much as you want. Don't be afraid to get paint on your hands. That's how you can tell you're a real artist. If you're not ashamed to walk around with paint clinging to your elbow or all over your hands. Do a little smile line here. Just a little bit more in the flowers. And then we're gonna dry it one more time and start painting our background in. Right, I've got my large filbert again, and we're gonna add some purple to the background. While you're doing the background, try it out using a heavier and a thinner mixture of the color to get a little bit of difference in there. So some thinner purple and some deeper purple. And just like before, I'm not worrying about overlapping into other areas. I actually think I'm going to throw just a hint more blue in there, just in a few spaces. Something else you can do, remember where I said you might want a water bottle? Before that dries, you can take your water bottle and just lightly mist it. Just a little bit. And let it run a little. Might want to keep a paper towel or something on the floor. And then you can even take a paper towel and kind of blot at a few spots. Just to break that up a bit. Now I have just a hint of white and my little scrubby brush, and we're gonna make some highlights. And this is a good way to cover up anything that maybe you didn't like quite as much, or just to give a little extra pop. So I'm gonna add some in my eyelid there, and just wherever I feel like there needs to be a little more highlight. Maybe in this area here where I didn't like how the blue transitioned to the yellow. So that little bit of white just helps to soften that a bit. But it doesn't cover it. You still get the glow from the color. It just eases it a little bit. And I'm just spotting it on however. You can always go back with your low light too and add more low light if you want. With the black and the shadows. I want a nice strong highlight here. And I can come into here and just add little dots of brightness. If you lose any of your black lines and you didn't want to, then just add it back in afterwards. All right, now I just blow dried this to make sure that this is completely dry. We're gonna add some highlights to the lotus, and then we are done. So just like I did with the face, about 50-50 with the medium and the white. I'm gonna come in here and just break this up a little. If you decide that you don't like that as you're adding it, then just before it dries, quickly spray it with some water and wipe it off. I kind of like it. And there's your Buddha. I hope that you learned a lot about glazing and how to use glazing medium, and that you'll be able to take that onto your next painting and come up with some really interesting ways to use it. As always, I'm super excited to see the paintings that you guys do, so please feel free to share them on my Facebook page. There's a link in the description below. Thanks as always for painting with me, everyone, and I'll see you next time.